The men behind Arcturus Rex discovered who were Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett. I have to admit, I never really understood why there was such controversy about the findings of Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett in their books. It seemed to me like everyone would be excited about the possibility that King Arthur, the real King Arthur, was found. From what I've read, their first book was fiction, but afterwards they introduced their findings in the non-fictional books that followed, which eventually led to the discovery of the legendary King Arthur, or Arcturus Rex Discovered. My first book I read of theirs was Arcturus Rex Discovered, and it seemed to me that they had a bit of a beef with the establishment and went on and on and on about it. I don't blame them though, not one bit. If you had your history retold to you incorrectly for generations, basically stolen and kept you from speaking your native language, then discovered everything you knew about your history was a lie, you'd be mad too, and rightfully so. I can remember watching Jeffrey Ash on TV and talking about his dig and how close they were to finding the answers about King Arthur, but in every documentary I saw with him, I don't believe he ever found a thing or any connection with King Arthur, if memory serves. One day, in 2012, I stumbled across a YouTube video titled King Arthur in America. I thought it was a joke and halfway expected a jump scare somewhere in there. But there was no jump scare, only an introduction to a man named Alan Wilson. It was then that wondered if there was a real chance that there was any truth in what he was saying, and that's when I obtained and read Arcturus Rex Discovered. But who was this guy, and how did he know what he claimed to know? This amateur guy? Did he and his colleague Baron Blackett really find King Arthur when the so-called experts never found a thing? Alan Wilson was born in Cardiff, Wales in 1932. He attended Cardiff University, where he earned his degree in history and economics, but he also studied archaeology for 2 years and actually passed his exams. Now, in America, after you've studied the core curriculum, math, science, English, and history for basically 2 years, you go on and get more in-depth education in your field of study. Then, after you've successfully completed and passed this coursework, you earn a bachelor's degree. If Mr. Wilson would have completed his studies in America, I wouldn't be surprised if he'd have received a bachelor's degree majoring in 3 fields of study. So here's a man who then used his economics degree to work in the industry, working his way up to a managerial level as an international consultant in heavy engineering and shipbuilding. He became very skilled in managing thousands in many departments. But now you may be wondering, how did this man manage to get involved in the study of King Arthur? It was around the 1950s that Mr. Wilson began to take interest in his own history, and went back to his favorite subject, history. Eventually his interest drove him back into the Dark Ages to a time of the legendary King Arthur. Always on the lookout for old rare manuscripts that he used as references, he realized someone else was looking at them too. When the librarian pointed Baron Blackett, a businessman and musician, into the direction of Alan Wilson, as he had the very book Baron was looking for, he quickly introduced himself to Mr. Wilson, and the rest, they say, is history. Together they pooled their resources and poured much, if not all, of their savings into purchasing the ruins and property of St. Peter's Church on Mynydie Gare in Glamorgan, the place where their Arthurian research led them, and the Arcturus Rex headstone was discovered. They raised more money for subsequent excavations, which were undertaken in 1990 by Dr. Eric Talbot of Glasgow University, and a team of professional archaeologists. It seems like they tried to do everything right. They went through the proper channels with all the red tape, trying to document their discovery by the pros, and yet others were bent on discrediting them, and I wondered why. Were they really onto something? In America, the first thing they do to whistleblowers is dig up any information they can get, whether it's a psychologist they went to in their childhood to help them deal with their parents' divorce, to PTSD they may have suffered during their military service. They'll use anything they can to discredit them. But we know this tactic, and it makes the whistleblower's information seem more credible. They were called frauds, and received threats to the point where in August 2011, somebody or some group attempted to murder Baron Blackett using an incendiary device, placing it under his bed, and creating a massive house fire which very nearly killed him. He was in a coma for 11 days, and his family was told there was a 25% chance that he'd survive. He did survive. But strangely, on December 14, 2023, in yet another house fire, at age 60, he unfortunately died. There have been no reports of any investigation that I've found into this second house fire that took Baron Blackett's life. Did someone or some group succeed at what they started years earlier? Sadly, about 2.5 months earlier, 91-year-old Alan Wilson had passed away. It makes one wonder, especially after the death of his colleague, if it was more than old age that took him away from this world. You know what they say, once is an accident, twice is a coincidence. What about 3 times? Well, that's a pattern. It implies that after the third event, the phenomenon stops being a simple chance event and becomes a significant, potentially predictable pattern. As if this story isn't strange enough already, there's a third death related to these 2 men. A man named Ross Broadstock, who apparently was picking up the reins of Wilson and Blackett as they were retiring. Their successor died first at age 56, 10 months before Alan Wilson, on October 17, 2022. Ross often promoted the work of Wilson and Blackett on his YouTube channel Britain's Hidden History. And today, the channel and Ross's website, Kimroglyphics, is run by his friends and family carrying on the history that has been lost since the 1700s. To the outsider, it doesn't seem like all 3 deaths are a coincidence. Had the attack on Barham in 2011 been left at that, and 11 years later all 3 men had not died within 14 months of each other, credence of their claims would have faded, I think. But after this has happened, it makes one wonder if there is truth behind their claims, and the newer narrative of British history for the past 300 years really is false. What do you think? I'll close this episode with a quote from Alan Wilson. "We only read the records. If it's not in the records, we don't put it in the book. If it's not on a piece of parchment or on a stone tablet or a jug or on a grave or whatever, it doesn't go in the book. If the site isn't there on a map and you can't stand on it, then it doesn't go in the book. We're not interested in extrapolating or interpreting or speculating in our research. Be weird if we didn't. It's seminal work. Nobody else has bothered for 300 years at least. We always admit the mistake, if we've made the mistake. We've got that wrong, and it's the right way to go." If you liked this video, please click the like and subscribe button, and give the notification bell a tap so that next time a video is posted, you'll be notified. Thanks for watching.